Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. My name is Vic and happy fall. It is officially the fall season. Even if the weather here isn't necessarily reflecting that, it is cooler in the mornings and in the evenings, but unfortunately daytime here is still in the upper 80s, so not exactly sweater weather, but you know, we're getting there. But I still want to get into that fall season ambiance, that fall mood, and so I thought I would share my go-to list of fall TV shows, movies, books, and more that really just help me set the stage for fall. Now, starting with my movie recommendations for fall, I have a go-to movie, and I never hear anyone talk about this movie in relation to fall, even though I feel like it embodies all of the cozy vibes and the spirit of Halloween especially, and that is Spirited Away. If you don't know, Spirited Away is an animated Studio Ghibli film, and it is just the coziest and most heartwarming movie, absolutely one of my favorites. In this movie, we are following our main character, Chihiro, who is a young girl that is moving to a different town with her family. As they're driving to their new house, her parents get a little bit lost and end up in front of this mysterious tunnel that leads to a river, and behind the river, what appears to be an abandoned amusement park. Even though Chihiro is feeling very unsettled by the entire situation and doesn't really want to go any further, her parents push forward to explore. As they get closer, Chihiro's parents start to smell this really delicious food and find the stand that is filled with delicious hot food just waiting for them. Chihiro's parents are so enticed by the smell that they start digging into the food. Now, Chihiro feels very uneasy about this. She doesn't want them to eat the food without asking for permission, and they're not listening to her, so she goes off to explore the rest of the park by herself. As she's exploring, she figures out that it's not actually an amusement park, but it's the forefront of a bathhouse, and as she's getting closer to the bathhouse, she runs into another boy around her age who immediately tells her that she needs to leave. Chihiro, who's freaked out, runs back to get her parents, only to discover that they've been turned into giant pigs. She's forced to leave them behind, but as she gets to the river and tries to cross to go back to their car, she's discovered that the river has turned into a giant ocean and she's unable to leave. She sees a boat come across the ocean to dock, and instead of people getting off of the boat, she sees that it is filled with different types of spirits. Chihiro learns that this is actually a bathhouse where spirits go to rejuvenate themselves after their time on Earth. Chihiro is forced to get a job at the bathhouse while also trying to figure out how to find her parents, get them turned back into humans, and how to escape. If you've never seen a Studio Ghibli movie, then the plot might sound a little bit weird, but I promise you these are the coziest movies, and none is cozier than Spirited Away. My next fall movie recommendation is such a classic. If you were a Disney kid growing up in the early 2000s, I have no doubt that you have seen this movie before, and that is Halloween Town. Halloween Town has the perfect combination of cozy and Halloween vibes, as you would expect, and it is the most nostalgic movie for me. In Halloween Town, we are following Marnie, who's a teenage girl, her younger brother Dylan, and her younger sister Sophie on Halloween night. And they really want to celebrate, they want to dress up, go trick-or-treating, eat candy, but their mom is completely against it. She is against all things Halloween and doesn't even want them talking about it. But right as they're about to go to bed, their grandmother shows up, and she's dressed up as a witch, has all of this candy, all of these decorations and costumes, and completely infuriates their mother, but brings them so much joy with the Halloween spirit. They're all ordered to go to bed early, but Marnie decides to stay up and eavesdrop on an argument that her mother and her grandmother are having in the kitchen. While listening to this argument, Marnie learns that they're actually a family of witches and that their mom has just been hiding their magical powers from them their entire lives. Her grandmother storms out of the house, upset that they don't know the truth about who they are, and Marnie sneaks out to follow her home. Unbeknownst to Marnie, her younger brother Dylan and younger sister Sophie also sneak out of the house behind her and following her as well. They sneak onto the bus that their grandmother has boarded, and before they know it, the bus begins to fly through the air and they are taken to this mysterious and quirky town called Halloween Town. In this town, every monster, ghoul, anything you can think of that has been mentioned in a scary story lives here, separated from humans, but they live pretty normal lives. They're all generally friendly, and they have jobs like being a mayor, being a dentist, being an accountant, all of these things. Once they get there, they have to adjust to the shock of seeing all these monsters and find their grandmother, but there's a darkness that's overtaking Halloween Halloween Town, and they have to work together to figure out what's wrong and get Halloween Town back to where it should be. The next movie is the classic fall embodied movie. If you are into all things cozy and witchy, you have definitely heard of this movie before, and that is Practical Magic. In Practical Magic, we are following Sally and Jillian Owens, who are part of this magical family that allegedly has a curse. The curse is that all of the women in the family are doomed to lose the men that they love. Because of this, Sally and Jillian kind of stay away from magic as they get older. That is, up until they accidentally kill Jillian's abusive boyfriend. They have to give themselves a quick crash course in magic while trying to hide the deed themselves, but as a police officer starts investigating and becoming suspicious of foul play, they're forced to learn how to resurrect this abusive boyfriend and unfortunately end up injecting him with an evil spirit instead. This is such a cozy and quirky movie, and it does get serious at times, but it is just the absolute best movie to watch in the fall. It has both the spooky elements and the cozy elements, and Sandra Bullock, which just makes it one of the best movies to watch at this time of year. The last movie on my fall movie recommendations list is The Craft. This is the OG witchy movie. If you are into the witchy spooky side of things, you have more than likely heard of this movie. It embodies that 90s energy, and they actually had, I believe it was a Wiccan consult when they were making the movie, so a lot of the magical aspects of it are actually real to life. In this movie, we are following our main character Sarah, who is just transferred to a school in Los Angeles. She doesn't really have a lot of friends, and she's seen as the odd one out, but she manages to make friends with these 3 girls who are part of a coven, and lucky for her, they're looking for their 4th member. Now, unbeknownst to the 3 girls, Bonnie, Rochelle, and Nancy, Sarah actually does have a natural born telekinetic gift. So when they start practicing witchcraft together, they find that their spells that normally don't do much suddenly have an extra boost given to them. When casting a minor spell leads to big results, the girls go a little bit power mad, and they learn exactly what consequences magical actions have. This is such an angsty movie, and just very, not necessarily dark academia, but I guess just dark spooky in general. I love the vibes of this movie. It is the pure 90s vibes, and I can't necessarily say cozy, but in a way it feels cozy to me. It has the witchy, the spooky, the 90s. It is just absolutely perfect to watch for fall. All right, now moving on to my list of TV shows to watch in the fall, we are starting out strong with Midnight Mass. Now, this show is actually recently new. I think it came out maybe a year or 2 ago, and it is one of my all-time favorite TV shows. This is a more drama storyline based TV show. It's only 1 season, and it is not so much cozy, but definitely spooky. We are following a bunch of different characters within this small town, and it's all kind of centered around this church within the town. The priest for this church went on a religious trip and got sick and wasn't able to come back, so he sends a younger priest back in his place to kind of take care of the town and to take care of the church. With the return of this younger priest, we are seeing miracles being performed, secrets coming to light, and all of this religious fervor starting to appear within the town. But there is a secret behind the miracles that will change this town forever. I can't give too many details without it spoiling some of the best plot twists to the story, but it is one of my absolute favorite TV shows. It is perfect for this time of year. I will say, if you're sensitive to religious bigotry or a lot of religious themes, this wouldn't be the TV show for you, and it is very dark and at times gory, so I definitely recommend looking up trigger warnings, but this is such a good spooky television show. I wouldn't call it scary. I guess it could be in some senses, but I don't think it makes you scared so much as it is a horror themed TV show. Now, switching back to the cozy side, my next TV show recommendation is The Ghost Whisperer. I almost never hear people talk about this TV show, but it is one of my absolute favorites. In the show, we are following Melinda Gordon, who is a medium. She can see and communicate with spirits, and she lives in this super cozy small town, and I believe she either owns or works at an antique store. Just picture this medium who is getting these messages from spirits or seeing these spirits, but sometimes the messages are confusing. She doesn't know who they are, where they're supposed to be, and she has to work to figure out their stories and then find their loved ones and help the spirits find peace. This TV show spans over several seasons, and it's one of those shows where every episode is kind of its own storyline, its own situation, but as you go further and further into the show, it starts to have more overarching storylines that take place. So less of a drama and more of each episode is its own individual thing, but it is one of the most beautiful and at the same time heartbreaking shows that I've ever seen. boring, but I absolutely love it. The next cozy TV recommendation is Charmed. I adore Charmed. This was my go-to show when I was a teenager. I would watch it all the time, always have it on. I love this TV show. Now, there are technically 2 Charmed TV series out right now. There's the old one, which is the one that I'm going to talk about, and then there is a new one because I believe they did a reboot of the series. I haven't personally watched the new one, so I can't tell you much about it, but the old one is perfect for getting into the fall mood. In Charmed, we are following the 3 Hallowell sisters, the oldest Prue, the middle child Piper, and the youngest Phoebe, and they're all kind of estranged and have been living apart because of their differences, but they have to come together when their Gramps dies. They're all joined back together in their Gramps house, and of course they're still bickering, but the youngest sister Phoebe is able to get into the attic, which has been locked their entire life, and in the attic she finds what appears to be a book of spells. Just for fun, Phoebe says some of the spells out loud, but afterwards weird things start to happen to the sisters. These powers they didn't realize that they had start popping up in the most inopportune places. Phoebe is getting psychic visions, Piper is freezing time unexpectedly, and Prue is moving objects with her mind. As these unexpected magical powers are starting to appear, magical dangers are also starting to appear. They have demons and warlocks and monsters that are popping up, and the sisters have to decide if they want to banish their powers forever and keep themselves safe, or use their powers for good and defend the innocent against this evil. This is another witchy recommendation, but it is also so cozy. It has those 90s, early 2000s vibes, and I just love this show so much. I highly recommend it. Each episode is kind of its own storyline, similar to Ghost Whisperer, but once you get into the series, they do have overarching storylines that follow as well, and the TV show really just gets very emotional and is just so well done. I absolutely love Charmed. Now, my next recommendation is on the spookier but still nostalgic side of things, but it's not out yet. It's coming out on October 13th, and that is the new Goosebumps series on Disney Plus and Hulu. Now, when I was a kid, I really liked horror, and for a kid, Goosebumps is horror. They used to have a bunch of Goosebumps movies, Goosebumps TV shows, and they're coming out with a new Goosebumps TV series, and I am so excited for it. If you don't know what Goosebumps is this book series by R.L. Stine, which was directed more towards a younger kid audience, but they're essentially like kid horror stories. And I will say some of the stories are pretty freaking creepy, so I don't know if they're just for kids, but I am so excited for this new series to come out. Typically with Goosebumps, you can expect some classic horror element or horror trope, but with an interesting twist to it. And usually they're more creepy and not necessarily horror, but I have definitely been surprised before. So I am so excited for the series to come out, and I definitely plan on binge watching it. My final fall TV show recommendation is more on the spooky side, but I also feel like it gives a lot of dark academia vibes, and that is The Midnight Club, which is on Netflix. In The Midnight Club, we are following these 8 different students that live in this manor for kids and students that are dying from a terminal illness. And these students have created this midnight club where they meet at midnight every night to tell each other stories, and where they make a promise that the next of them to die will show a sign from the other side to let the others know that there's an afterlife. This has all of the spookiness, all of the creepiness, and also a lot of heartfelt moments, and I highly recommend this show. I actually haven't finished it myself. I am in the middle of the series, but it has all of the fall vibes that I've been looking for, and I absolutely adore it. And there's a huge mystery aspect to it. I would say this is less horror and maybe more of like a thriller mystery, but I adore this series. Alright, next I'll be moving to my fall book recommendations, starting with The London Seance Society. I actually took the cover of this off because I think the original hardcover is absolutely gorgeous. I've mentioned this book on my channel before, so I'll just give a little bit of a quick recap, but in The London Seance Society, we are following our main character, Lena, who has unfortunately recently lost her sister. Her sister has been mysteriously murdered, and she hasn't been able to find out anything about who did it. Lena is a very logical person. She doesn't really believe in anything spiritual, but because she can't find any other answers, she turns to the spiritual to see if she can get help finding who murdered her sister. Her sister was always very interested in seances and ghosts and psychic abilities and things like that, so she reaches out to her sister's old mentor, Vaudeline, for help contacting her sister via seance to see if she can get answers on how her sister was killed, why she was murdered, and who did it. Unfortunately, Vaudeline isn't able to perform the seance on her own, so she starts to train Lena so that she can perform it herself to reach out to her sister. And this book is the perfect little spooky fall book. It's pretty much a mystery. I would describe this book as a mixture of Sherlock Holmes, but if he got clues by using his spiritual senses instead of physical senses. There's a lot of mystery and secrets, and of course ghosts and seances, and this is just such a cute little mysterious, almost dark academia like spooky novel, and I adored reading this. I actually read it all in one sitting, and I highly recommend reading it for fall because it will put you into that spooky mindset. The next book recommendation is actually my all-time favorite dark academia book, and that is The Atlas Six by Olivia Blake. The Atlas Six is like a dark academia fantasy book, and it is so good. In the Atlas Six, we are following this society called the Alexandrian Society, who are tasked with guarding all of the hidden knowledge of the world. So if we're thinking of the Library of Alexandria, all of the books that were lost, they have all of that knowledge, and they are the caretakers that are tasked with protecting it and keeping it hidden. And every decade they kind of host this competition of sorts where they choose the 6 most talented magicians in the world, and they bring them to the society's archives, and they essentially have a year to live there and prove themselves. But only 5 of them will be permitted to actually join the Alexandrian Society, and 1 of them won't make it. Our main characters are all of these 6 initiates that are working to be part of the society, and all of their interactions with each other, from the competitive side of things to them having to work together, and it is just the best dark academia vibed book. I can't really describe it, but just think of the mysteries and the secrets and this giant archive, giant library, and it is just the perfect dark academia book for fall. I highly recommend it. This next book is the perfect horror romance book. It's not quite horror, but it's also partially romance, and that is The Vampires of El Norte by Isabel Cañas. This was a book of the month pick, and it just happened to be perfect for fall, even though I read it in summertime. This book is a historical fiction horror romance, kind of. This book takes place during the Mexican-American War in Mexico, and we follow 2 main characters, Nena and Nestor. Nena and Nestor have been childhood friends, and Nena's family kind of owns the land that they all live on, and Nestor is the nephew of one of the men that work on the land. In the beginning of the book, Nena and Nestor are, I think, 13 years old, and they love each other, but they're not really supposed to spend that much time together because Nena is kind of seen as upper class and Nestor is seen as this lower class person. So at night, Nena and Nestor sneak out together and they go on these adventures. They've been told all of these stories by Nestor's abuela, and so they start to investigate to see if the stories are real, including different stories like La Llorona and Lost Treasure and all of these monsters. On this particular night that the book starts off on, they are looking for this lost treasure. Nestor hopes that if he can find this treasure, he will be rich enough to own his own land, and one day he'll be allowed to be with Nena. But while they're looking for this treasure, this monster comes out of the darkness and attacks Nena. And Nestor thinks that she's dead. He carries her back to her family, and they pronounce her dead. Nestor can't face the grief of being the reason that Nena's gone and feeling like a failure, so he runs away. And many years pass by, and we find out that Nena actually survived the attack, but she has no memory of what happened. And in her mind, Nestor ran away for no reason because nobody will tell her the truth of what happened that night. Meanwhile, Nestor, who has thought that Nena is dead, is now 22, 23 years old, and he is being recruited back to fight in the Mexican-American War for Nena's family. Nestor goes back home, is surprised to find that Nena is still alive, but Nena is furious at him for leaving her alone. She's trying to fight off her father's attempts to marry her off, and she wants to prove herself useful for the war, and so she volunteers to travel with the Mexican army to act as a healer while they're fighting against the American army. Nesta and Nena are reunited, but their relationship's pretty rocky. But as they discover that there are worse things going on than the war, including a sickness that's spreading around that only Nena can solve, and mysterious monsters that seem to be appearing at every corner, they end up having to work together to save their family and to also work to save themselves. This is such a good book. I really did enjoy this book. I described it as a romance book set in a horror setting because it doesn't focus super duper heavily on the horror aspect, but it still gives those spooky vibes that remind me of fall. My next book recommendation is Legends and Lattes by Travis Baldree, and this is the ultimate cozy recommendation. I actually have not read this book yet, but I have been recommended it so many times. In this book, we are following Viv, who is a retired adventurer, a retired orc, and she's wanting to open up a coffee shop and put her adventure days behind her. And it's kind of a slice of life as we follow her trying to set up this coffee shop, introduce people to what coffee is because they're not familiar, while also having to deal with enemies from her past that are coming to haunt her. I've been told that this is the ultimate cozy book, and it is on my list to read for this fall. Even just looking at the cover, it looks so cute, and I believe there is a sequel that's either coming out or is already out that is supposed to have the same cozy vibes as well. So just picture a retired adventurer who's now taking on the task of opening their own coffee shop business. It sounds so cute and so sweet, and I'm very excited to read it and get all of the cozy vibes. Alright, the last of my fall book recommendations I'm actually grouping together because they are all Grady Hendrix books. If you don't know who Grady Hendrix is, he's one of my all-time favorite horror authors. I always describe him as like campy horror because it's horror but not super serious horror, if that makes sense. It's very enjoyable. Like if you've ever seen the Scream movies, it's like that. Like it's horror but like not necessarily funny, but like light horror. I always just call it campy. That's what makes the most sense. So these are my top 3 Grady Hendrix novels, starting out with How to Sell a Haunted House. This is the newest Grady Hendrix novel, I believe, and I read it earlier this year. In this book, we are following Louise, who has kind of been running from her family her whole life, especially her brother Mark, who her family has always kind of idolized, even though he's a little bit of a mess up at life. But unfortunately, Louise and Mark's parents die in a car crash very suddenly, and Louise is forced to leave her daughter and travel back to her hometown and her brother to help plan their funeral and deal with their assets, including their house, which is filled to the brim with all of these creepy dolls and puppets that their mom collected. While trying to get their estate settled and the funeral planned, Mark and Louise are bickering back and forth while also dealing with their grief at the same time. But as they're bickering between whether the house should be sold or kept, they're trying to clean out all of the dolls and puppets. But it seems like every time Louise puts a doll in the trash, it reappears in the same spot the next day, and she can't help but feel like a pair of eyes, or maybe several pairs of eyes, are watching her every time she's in the house. This book was terrifying. If you were scared of dolls, if you're scared of puppets, even the imagery of this book freaked me out. It's not the same horror style as like Stephen King. Like I said, it is campy, and honestly the story was so unexpected. The plot twist in this book, so unexpected. They really took me off guard, but the story itself is so beautiful and so heartbreaking, and I cannot recommend this enough. If you like horror, or even if you don't normally like horror, I would give Grady Hendrix a chance, especially this book, because it is so good. My number 2 Grady Hendrix book is My Best Friend's Exorcism. This was the second book by Grady Hendrix, I believe, that I've ever read, and it is so good. This does have all the 80s vibes since it does take place in the 80s, and I believe there's a movie that was made about this book as well. I think it might be an Amazon Prime Video movie. But in this book, we are following 2 best friends, Abby and Gretchen. They've been best friends ever since they were little kids, and they're now high school sophomores. They go on this trip to this cabin in the woods, and they go skinny dipping, but something goes wrong, and Gretchen ends up out in the woods by herself for a really long time. At first, it seems like she was just a little bit freaked out and things are fine, but shortly after, Gretchen starts to act a little bit weird. She's being meaner and she's acting very different, and Abby realizes that Gretchen has been possessed by a demon. Although Abby knows she's possessed, no one seems to believe her, and Gretchen is secretly reaching out to Abby for help, but the demon controlling Gretchen's body is ruthless and is doing everything that she can to ruin the lives of Abby and their other friends. This book is very, very good. If you like the trope of like a demonic possession, it is so good, so campy, and just so entertaining. I actually surprisingly cried at the end of this book. I wasn't expecting it, but the themes of friendship just run so heavily through this book and through the end of this book that it is just one of my absolute favorite horror books of all time. And my final book recommendation for fall and final Grady Hendrix book recommendation is the Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires. This one is so interesting because it's a very domestic horror. It takes place in the suburbs with these moms that are part of a book club, and we're following them as this new man moves to town. And one of the moms starts to realize that something's just a little bit off about him, and she starts to realize that he's buddying up with all of the men in the town, he's schmoozing up the women, but she discovers that he is actually a vampire, and he's preying on the children in the poor part of their town where nobody really notices or cares. This mom is doing her best to protect her family and her town while also being called crazy, and it is just such a good book, although I will say it is a little bit frustrating. It's a very interesting take on vampires, I will say, and my 3rd favorite Grady Hendrix. Now, moving away from the books, movies, and TV shows, my next category is going to be YouTube channels. I am a big watcher of YouTube. I'm on YouTube, and I have so many channel recommendations that I could put out, but I've narrowed it down to the fall YouTube channel recommendations, and I'm also separating them into 2 categories. So I'll have the cozy channels channels, and then the more spooky, scary channels. Starting with the cozy channels, I cannot mention Cozy and Fall without mentioning Cozy K. Kennedy is the ultimate cozy channel. She specifically does a lot of content around cozy video games. She'll test out video games, show the gameplay, let you know what's worth buying, but she also does a lot of cozy vlogs and cozy videos about hobbies as well. And I just can't mention anything fall and cozy related without bringing up her channel. I cannot recommend her channel enough. My next cozy channel recommendation is Weili Huang. I've actually watched Weili's channel since I was maybe 12 or 13 years old, and her content has evolved so much as I've grown up and as she's grown up, but recently she has been putting a lot of vlogs out and a lot of cozy vlogs around camping and around her life at home. And I don't know why, even in the summer, it just gives me fall vibes. It's just so cozy and warm, and watching Weili's channel is honestly like you're having a conversation with an old friend, and you can be snuggled up with a blanket and a mug of hot chocolate and you're just talking with your friend, and that's genuinely what it feels like. She's hilarious and genuine, and her content is just so warm and inviting. My next channel recommendation is Annabelle Margaret. This is actually her vlog channel. She has a main channel called The Green Witch, which focuses on more witchy content, but her vlog channel is just, it's honestly beautiful. She just has this way of filming videos, and the cinematography, it's just absolutely gorgeous. She is very nature related, very involved with plants and flowers, and the way that she films herself and her thoughts and her connection to the seasons and her emotions as they pass is just absolutely gorgeous. And although she doesn't post super regularly on there, I think it's maybe like once a month, when she does post, it is just so beautiful and so cozy, and you really feel like you're a witch in a cottage in the forest, and it's just the perfect vibe. My last cozy YouTube channel recommendation is Darling Desi. I cannot mention fall without mentioning her channel. I just recently discovered her channel actually and was taken aback by the video quality and the aesthetics and just everything. Like, this girl was made for autumn. Like, it is her season, no doubt. Darling Desi makes different lifestyle content. I've seen her do fall recommendations, a trip to the apple orchard, and it is just so cozy, so inviting, and so fall. Like, it just embodies the autumn season, and I cannot recommend her enough. She seems so sweet and so genuine, and her content really puts you in the fall mood. And even if you're not actively watching it, even having it in the background just sets the mood for fall, especially the way that her videos are colored. It is just perfect for autumn. Now, moving away from the cozy YouTube channel recommendations into the spookier side, I have to admit something about myself. My guilty pleasure is watching ghost hunting videos on YouTube. I'm going to mention my favorite ghost hunting YouTube channels because it has that spooky vibe that really matches up with this time of year, and I feel like a lot of these channels also tend to do specific specialized content around Halloween. Now, I can't mention ghost hunting on YouTube without mentioning Sam and Colby. I feel like they are the kings of ghost hunting. They're the most well-known channel. The only thing is they don't post super duper often, not as often as some of the other channels, but when they do, it is very high quality. They go to these different haunted locations and they try to get evidence, and honestly, their storytelling abilities are just very impressive. Even if they're not getting a lot of evidence, they still make the videos very interesting, and Sam and Colby themselves are absolutely hilarious, so it's very entertaining to watch. My second ghost hunting channel recommendation is Overnight. It is led by Elton and his friend Corey as they go to these different haunted locations around the US and also in the UK. Pretty much anywhere that there's something haunted, they're probably gonna go to. And my favorite thing about Overnight is how funny they are. They are absolutely hilarious. Sometimes they'll be in the middle of a very serious investigation and it will just suddenly become a skit, and I think it is so funny, and a lot of times it seems like the spirits react to them because of how funny they are and because of their energy, and I just absolutely love it. I also love the way they involve their audience. They let audience members join them as they go on different ghost hunting adventures so that they can see that everything they're doing is real, and I just absolutely love their content and how hilarious they are. My last ghost hunting channel recommendation is Twin Paranormal. I actually only found them a few months ago and I adore their channel. They do ghost hunting just like Sam and Colby and Overnight, but I have found that they are the kindest, most respectful people when it comes to ghost hunting. They're not egging on spirits, and if you imagine if there is a spirit, if there is a ghost that they're talking to that has gone through this trauma, these horrors, you would want to be respectful to them, and they honestly are the most respectful people. They are very kind, and I just love the way that they interact with the spirits. They treat them like they're real people, and even when they get scared, they'll apologize for being scared because they know that they're doing what they've asked them to do, and I just appreciate their channel so much. But they post post every Sunday, so you're getting a lot of content from them, whereas some of the bigger channels don't post as often. So I highly recommend Twin Paranormal. Now, my last YouTube channel recommendations are not necessarily channels so much as specific videos themselves. And this is for all of the horror junkies out there like myself. If you like horror, these are going to be for you. Just go on YouTube and look up short film horror story winners, and you will find all of these videos of all of these winners of these short film competitions for the horror category. And I swear these short films are scarier than these like full-length movies that I've seen in theaters. I don't have any specific channels to recommend, but I do have my top 3 horror short films to recommend. The first one is Intruders by the channel Screamfest. The second one is Ignore It by Grimoire Horror. And the third one is The Ballerina by Social House Films. Now, I wish I could give you some kind of synopsis or idea of what these 3 are about, but they're genuinely so short that me giving you anything is going to give you too much. I would just take the time to look them up on YouTube and watch them because they are so good and so freaky. And if you really like being scared, or if you like horror, then you will definitely appreciate these. You can really just dive into a rabbit hole of these because there's so many of them listed on YouTube. Now, my last recommendations are going to be pretty quick, and this is my fall lo-fi YouTube channels / ambient noise YouTube channels. I'm the kind of person that cannot have complete silence in the background. I always have to have something on, whether that's a TV show or movie or music or ambient noise. I have to have something. And as we go into fall and winter and the nights get longer and it's darker longer, I really need to have that music on to set the vibe. My all-time favorite lo-fi / ambient noise channel is Cozy Rain. They have a mixture of lo-fi sounds like hip-hop and jazz, but they also have just ambient noises. So sometimes if I don't want music on, I'll just put on a thunderstorm noise or a fireplace noise, and it has the most beautiful artwork behind it for you to put on your TV, but the most relaxing noises. So you can choose between a thunderstorm or a coffee cafe in the fall, or even a spooky dark academia library or haunted manor. They really have a lot of different aesthetics and sounds to choose from, and I just love putting them on in the background while I read or while I do anything. My other favorite lo-fi channel is Closed on Sunday, and specifically because they have a Star Wars lo-fi video that is always live and always playing. If you are a Star Wars fan like me, you will definitely appreciate this. It is essentially remixed lo-fi of all of the soundtracks from Star Wars, and the background is Ahsoka studying, and it is just very nostalgic for me and makes me super happy to have on. All right, that's it for this video. Thank you so much for listening to my recommendations. If you have any recommendations of your own for how you get into the fall mood, whether that's movies or TV or YouTube channels, please feel free to leave them down below. I would love to check them out because I'm always trying to get deeper into the fall spirit. But thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, feel free to leave a like down below, and if you want to see more videos like this or just more of me, then you can subscribe to my channel. Thank you guys. Bye.